What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest. We're going through the latest Detroit Lions news, and I need you guys to bear with me as I'm working with the new camera setup and the audio. Okay, I'm trying to make it better, but I'm going to be honest, definitely not a camera expert. Okay, I have no idea. I struggle to make sure, like, how does it focus? Like, I'm trying to go through the settings and figure it out. Dude, there's like 6 settings pages. And then there's like 14 within each settings page. It's insane. So it confuses the heck out of me. With that said, though, we're on our way. We're not there yet, but we're on our way. Y'all see the background. Also, there is a Jared Davis video coming soon, so stay tuned for that. That video actually may already be out, or it may come out after this one. I'm not sure. However, today we're taking a look at a rumor that may involve the Detroit Lions. So let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to my video. Glad you guys are here. And we're back with another episode of Lions Latest. We're going through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today, we're talking about a rumor. Now, what's exciting about this video to me is that it has the potential to be less than 20 minutes long. Okay, let me just start there. You guys know for sure, but I'm just saying it seems like on the surface it has potential. And the way I'm going to make that the case is I'm not doing like a full breakdown. We're not taking a look at film here today. We will dive into some numbers. We're going to talk about some options that the Lions could have if this was a legitimate scenario and kind of my initial thoughts to seeing this rumor. Maybe down the road we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. Of course, if something happens, we'll go all into it. However, there has been a small little rumor put out there. It was right before I fell asleep last night. It popped up, it alerted on my phone that the Lions may actually be in the mix with this rumor. So it's like, all right, we have to address it today, at least get our initial thoughts on the whole situation and why the Lions maybe would be interested. And you guys saw the thumbnail, you read the title. We know for a while Baker Mayfield has kind of been involved with a couple of teams, Seattle and Carolina. Those are the two teams that have continued to come up. Since they've made the Deshaun Watson trade, they have Baker Mayfield on his 5th-year option, the final year of his contract, $18.85 million cap hit. I think that's the exact number for this season. Of course, he's not under contract for upcoming years, but because it's that 5th-year option, it's fully guaranteed. The Browns are paying that. The Browns have cap space this year. There's no question. However, they are paying that. And since they have Deshaun Watson now through the trade, and it is the last year of his deal, they would take trading him and getting anything out of it versus just releasing the player, because some think it may actually come to that they just may end up cutting Baker Mayfield, but they would probably take really anything, we think. I'm not really sure there. And they also, of course, went out and signed Jacoby Brissett to be his backup on a 1-year deal. He's got like $4.5 million, and that would be dead cap if he was cut. So it seems like they like him as the option. If Deshaun Watson gets suspended, he can't play this year, they're fine with going with Jacoby Brissett, we think, instead of trying to Baker Mayfield, because I think the whole Baker Mayfield situation there is a mess. I think for Baker, he needs to get out. I don't love the way that it was necessarily handled there from the Browns. I just think the whole situation is a disaster. I can't see a scenario where he's back and playing with the Browns this season. But we've continued to hear a couple teams come up. Seattle, because they didn't go out and draft a quarterback, and their quarterback right now is Drew Lock, so that's continued to come up. And also the Carolina Panthers, because they have Sam Darnold. The difference is they did draft Matt Corral, so it would be a little bit maybe more surprising to me if they got Baker Mayfield, because they still did draft a quarterback, even though I don't know if Matt Corral's going to be ready this season, so maybe that's what it is. It's like, oh, we want to be better because, you know, the Panthers are in a spot where they feel like they have to win now. I don't know. Point is, now the Detroit Lions may be within this rumor. That doesn't mean that they're legitimately in the mix for this, but it popped up on my phone yesterday, according to MI Football, who's actually been pretty good with rumors. They've missed some for sure, but at the same time, they've got me ahead of a lot of like little news stories that have popped out. And they're saying, now it just says source. They don't really have a source. They always do that. It says source, the Lions are involved for Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield, along with the Seahawks currently. Seattle, to me, makes probably the most sense. If there was like a designation or a spot, Seattle probably makes the most sense. But now they're saying the Lions may be involved with this. And there's always been kind of like the little like thought, well, maybe the Lions should go get Baker Mayfield. And you guys know kind of my stance on that. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But now with this little rumor popping out, even if it's not true, because it's a rumor, so they may not be true, I thought we could at least discuss the thought of the trade today, and then we can get into it deeper down the road, especially if we we start to hear more, words coming from it, it's like, wow, the Lions are seriously involved here, because we all know about the obvious connection the Lions have within the front office, which is John Dorsey, who was there when the Browns took Baker Mayfield 1 overall. And I actually liked that draft selection by the Browns. I liked the fact they took Baker. I was a Baker fan, really. And when you see his, how he got to where he was, I'm a very big Baker fan. But really, when he played Ohio State, we all know about how he spiked it on the Ohio State logo. From there on, I was a Baker Mayfield fan. Like, that's the guy. And then, of course, the Cleveland Browns took him 1 overall. I thought that was the right pick for the Cleveland Browns. They had a good season in 2020. They went 11-5. They beat the Steelers when they were up 28-0 at one point in that game. It was absolutely terrible. The first play for the Steelers, ball goes over Ben Roethlisberger's head, and it's a touchdown for the Browns. Point is, they got it turned around, and it was like, the Browns, we always looked at the Browns as that team, and they'll never do that. But then they did it with Baker Mayfield. Last season was a very big mess. He didn't play very well. Also, I think they didn't handle the situation the best. Okay, clearly he was injured. Clearly it was hampering his play. He had a very rough season, and now there's that tied along with the idea that, it's maybe not mature enough, whatever it may be. All those words and things can be twisted really however you want it to be, right? If they're playing well, you see that fiery attitude. You saw it against Steelers. He'll talk in the face of a, opponent, and you're like, yeah, I love that. That's our guy. But then when you lose, it's like, man, he just needs to be quiet and go win some football games. So that's going to happen depending on how you are as a team. That's always going to happen if you're having success or if you're not having success. But either way, aside from all that, because even there was some little questions coming out of the draft, I do want to talk about this idea for the Lions, because for me, if something were to happen between the Lions and the Browns with Baker Mayfield, it would come down to basically 2 scenarios for the Lions. And one of them definitely makes more sense to me than the other scenario, and we're going to talk about both of those ideas right now. And as we said, Baker Mayfield's on the 5th year of his option, so it's $18.85 million cap hit. It is guaranteed for the Browns this season. They want to get out of that contract, but of course teams are looking at it and saying, man, I don't know. I mean, right now a lot of teams don't have cap space. Let's start there, because the offseason just went down. Not a lot of teams have much money to spend, so $18.85 million to take on, especially if you're not giving them a player and having them take on cap space in return, is a lot of money at this state right now, and not a lot of teams have that money. For example, the Detroit Lions salary cap, according to Over the Cap, they don't have $18.85 million right now. So if the Browns wanted to send him to the Lions and they took none of that money on, the Lions financially wouldn't be able to afford it. They would have to scramble to try to make something shake to try to open up that kind of money. And that's not the situation that you want to be in. So what the Browns have reportedly kind of said is that they'd be willing to take on $9 million of that contract. A little bit over $9 million of cap is what the team would be taking on that made that trade if the Browns took on $9 million of that cap. So that goes against their cap hit. They take on $9 million of it. The team that's getting Baker Mayfield, instead of taking 18.8, they take on, $9.8 million in cap space. Now, there has been a report out there that apparently the Carolina Panthers wanted them to take on like $14 million of it, and the Browns thought that was too high. We'll see. I don't know. What's interesting about this whole situation is that financially, compared to the Panthers and the Seattle Seahawks, as of right now, the Lions have less cap space than both of those teams. So if the Lions are this new team that apparently is maybe just joined the mix because Seattle was close to getting a deal done, but this new team joined the mix, so the Browns didn't get a deal done, that's surprising to me, because that would mean that, to me, the deal didn't get done because either, number one, the Lions say, well, we're willing to take on more of that cap than Seattle is. I don't know how the Lions would do that. It would mean that the Detroit Lions would have to try to find a way to open up more cap space, I would think, because $9 million, it's not a ton. You're going to have to find a way to open a little bit more, which would surprise me. Or the Lions would be then, again, this is assuming the rumor, if this was the Lions, then the Lions maybe are saying that they're willing to give up more draft compensation, because while we think they may just give them up for anything, if the Panthers, or let's say Seattle is close to a deal, but if the rumors are true that a deal stopped because of that, how much are the Lions willing to give up? The Lions may have offered more draft capital and said, hey, we'll give you more draft capital, but you have to take on more of the cap space. So maybe that's halted things. It would surprise me, but to me, I'm not trying to give up very much draft capital at all for a guy that may not end up being our guy. He's only got 1 year left on his deal. They could be just like, hey, look, this is better than cutting him because we don't want to have all this dead cap and get nothing in return. We'll take a 7th round pick as long as you guys take some of this cap away. That's all. We don't need anything in return. The Browns could be looking at it like this. The Detroit Lions side of things, according to Over the Cap, they have $9.7 million in cap space currently. If this happened and Jared Goff is still here, the $1 one move that immediately comes to mind is, well, okay, you would probably cut a guy like David Blau because you don't need to have 4 quarterbacks. You cut him, he saves you like $700K, and you open up a little bit of cap space. Flip side of it for Jared Goff's situation, we know that Jared Goff has over $30 million in dead cap this season. So Lions, they really aren't going to move on from him this year, right? We understand that. By cut, the Lions wouldn't move on from Jared Goff this season. Next year, we know his dead cap drops big time down to $10 million and then $5 million a year after that. So that's why it's the potential out that the Lions have. And he has a $31.15 million cap hit for this season, which actually isn't that high. We broke that down in our, salary cap video that we did. This first scenario seems kind of unlikely just for many reasons, but it would save the Lions basically more cap space right now if the Lions were to make a trade where they sent Jared Goff to the Cleveland Browns. For the Browns, they would have at least Goff for this season. Now, I don't know how much sense that makes for the Cleveland Browns because, again, they have the money to take that on, and if they know Deshaun Watson is suspended, they could roll with Jared Goff this season and see how far they can get, try to keep maybe that Super Bowl window kind of open. They think it's an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett, which I would think it's a pretty big upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. But at the same time, then because he has that out, they could move on from him after the season and then just have him become a free agent. If he plays well, maybe someone picks him up. But basically, you're like, yeah, we're moving on from him after this season. Or they could try to trade him if he plays really well this season. So that would be the benefit for the Browns. The downside for the Browns is that they would be taking on still a pretty good amount of cap space because they're taking on Jared Goff's contract. Not the bonuses that are guaranteed to him, but they would be taking on the base salaries, which for this season is over $10 million. Year after that is 20.65, and year after that is 21.65 million. The Detroit Lions did something like this. They traded Goff away. It would open up cap space for this season because they'd have the $5 million in dead cap according to over the cap for this year. They could at that point take on the entirety of the Baker Mayfield contract, and they would still be opening up a little bit of cap space for this year. They'd be in about the $18 million range. So they'd be opening up like $9 million in cap space. For next year, they'd be opening up some money as well, over $20 million in cap space, but then they'd have about $10 million in dead cap that they'd be dealing with, which is what they're going to deal with regardless if they wait another year and cut him, right? So it's kind of the same scenario there. So that's kind of the situation. Now, to me, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, I think, for either side. I don't think the Cleveland Browns maybe want to do that. I think they're trying to open up cap space, and it seems like they're cool with Jacoby Brissett going into the season if they don't have Deshaun Watson, even though Jared Goff would be an upgrade. What it would do for the Lions is they wouldn't have 2 quarterbacks, wouldn't have that kind of back and forth going on in the offseason, but then Baker Mayfield's your guy. I mean, that's your guy this season. You have another option. You don't have a draft quarterback. It is Baker Mayfield this season, and who knows what you're going to get with Baker Mayfield. Of course, he had the shoulder injury last year. You don't know really what you're going to get there, and he's joining into a new system, all the off-the-field talk, but he'd be joining into that probably around just before training camp time or around training camp time, so it's not a lot of time to get acclimated within this offense. So that's kind of like the first idea. I just think that's pretty unlikely that something like that would go down. Financially for both sides, they could make it work, but I don't think that's something that would happen. And then the other side, which seems to be more realistic if a trade were to happen, is that the Detroit Lions would keep Jared Goff and they would trade for Baker Mayfield. Now, again, in this scenario, the Browns would have to take on some of that cap number, at least $9 million, probably a little bit more to incentivize the Detroit Lions a little bit. That way they have cap space to take him on and take on his contract. Now, again, something like this is possible because Jared Goff isn't getting paid $50 million in cap number this year. It's only 31. And you'd have both quarterbacks on the roster for this season. Now, the Lions would probably have to give up some sort of pick in exchange. I don't think the Browns are looking for a player, so they probably have to give up some sort of draft compensation. The issue with this is that there's a lot that would be going on here if you had both Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, because to me there's a lot of issues with it. First thing is that Baker Mayfield's on the final year of his deal, so it's not like you have a rookie. It's not like Baker's a rookie. He just got drafted this year, and of course there's always gonna be the talk like, oh hey, we played bad this week or we lost this week. People are gonna want to see the backup. They may feel that pressure. Hey, let's put the backup in. Let's put the draft pick in. Well, with Baker Mayfield, there's gonna be even more pressure to that, because it's like, dude, if we think Baker Mayfield has any shot to prove that he can be the guy, then we have to find a way to get him on the field. We don't have 2 years to wait. He has to get on the field this season. And to me, I would think that Goff would come into the year as the starting quarterback. But then, at the same time, as I said, there'd be a lot of pressure, because if anything goes wrong, everybody would want to see Baker. People would already come in the year wanting to see Baker Mayfield play. And then at that point, but you would have to see him play at some point. Well, what happens if Jared Goff comes out and he does well, which I think he will do? What if he comes out and does well? You just not do anything with Baker Mayfield? Like, we'll just cut our losses with the fact that we went out and got this guy and gave up a little bit of draft compensation. The way I can see the Detroit Lions even considering something like this is that they are looking at it like, look, Goff has no chance to be our future. We don't believe any shot that he's going to be our future quarterback. He is purely a placeholder for this season, and we know for sure he is gone after this year. We already made up basically our minds he is gone after this year. Then it could make sense, because it's like, well, if that's the case and you want to see Baker, then I can understand why you would do it. But if you think there's any shot that Goff can be the guy, to me it doesn't make any sense to make this kind of move, because again, there's just going to be that there the whole time. And it's like, oh, you also got Baker. I understand the competition side of it, but there's a difference of competition in a guy that has 1 year left on his deal that's trying to go prove himself, and a rookie quarterback that you draft that has 4 years plus potentially a 5th-year option if he's a first-round pick. That's a very big difference for a team in terms of you got to see the guy on the field. Now everybody brings up, well, John Dorsey has that connection, with Baker Mayfield. Well, so does Brad Holmes with Jared Goff, right? He was the guy that really wanted to trade up. He's like, that's the guy I would trade up for, which was getting Jared Goff. So, I understand that there may be some love there from John Dorsey, but I'm sure there's also love from who is our general manager, right? Not a guy that's helping out. He's our general manager that liked Jared Goff. Back to the last scenario, if you traded Jared Goff away and you had Baker Mayfield, the issue there would be, okay, just kind of, I guess, like the Goff situation as well, but Baker's not under contract. So unlike Goff, who is under contract through 2023 and 2024, which isn't very expensive amongst some of the guys that are going to be top paid, Kyler's going to get paid soon. So the difference is Baker, you would have to pay. So now you're in the boat of, okay, do we pay Baker? If Baker's your only quarterback, right, and you traded Goff away in the first scenario, now you have to make the decision. Do we pay Baker Mayfield depending on how well he plays? Because what if it's just like a solid season? The Lions win 7-8 games, right? Do you pay Baker Mayfield at that point? Because at that point, his contract's probably going to be much higher than Goff's is, just because of where the contracts are going because of his age. He's going to want to get paid. So do you pay him? Or do you just say, you know what, we're not going to pay the guy? Well, then at that point, you have no quarterback under contract. You have nobody. So now it's either we have to go find someone in free agency who's probably a downgrade, who's probably a for sure stopgap, or we have to make a major trade for a different quarterback, or we have to draft someone. We basically put ourselves in that box of we have to do something. So to me, both scenarios don't really make a ton of sense, which is why I'm on the side of I would not make this trade if I'm the Detroit Lions. At least as of right now, my thoughts on it. If this becomes a bigger storyline, we'll dive into the film and things like that. But as of right now, I definitely don't believe the Detroit Lions should be involved for trading for a guy like Baker Mayfield. Part of that, you guys know, I believe Jared Goff can be the guy, and I believe he will play well this season. So that's a very big part of it for me, is it just doesn't make sense. I want to see how Goff does this year. And to me, if you bring in Baker Mayfield and you have Jared Goff, it's going to be a mess. Or, of course, the other scenario, if you trade away Jared Goff, well, he's gone at that point. And I believe Jared Goff is the better quarterback. I also think we haven't seen the ceiling of Jared Goff. That's from a guy that is a Baker Mayfield fan. I just personally prefer Jared Goff over Baker Mayfield, and I also like the financial situation better. Yes, is there dead money if you keep him and you cut him after this year? Yes. However, if you don't, the cap hit is pretty darn low amongst other quarterbacks, and you have a quarterback, right? So you can still draft the guy. You have a little bit of like, okay, we still have an option to go back on. Plus, with the whole Ben Johnson talk, look, yeah, Ben Johnson as your OC this year, how well he played, how well he did with Goff last season. I mean, to me, it just doesn't make sense to make some kind of move like this right before training camp. Like, this would be something that would have had to been done. To just do it now seems kind of random to me. And again, having both of those guys is not like having a rookie. It's a different situation to have a Baker Mayfield who's on the final year, because you're going to have to see him. You can't just not play the guy. But what happens if Goff does well? Do you kind of like force him in there as soon as you see a mistake? Because you can't have two quarterbacks. If you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. You've heard that before. You have one quarterback. To me, that would be a messy situation if the Detroit Lions tried to make something like that happen. Look at a guy like Baker Mayfield from what we've seen so far in his career. And again, I like him, and I thought last year was kind of a mess. I thought it was a bad situation. Of course, statistically, he didn't do very well. Completed just about 60% of his passes. 6-8 on the season. They wanted to go get Deshaun Watson, partly because Deshaun Watson is a very good quarterback, partly because they think they're in the Super Bowl window, and partly because they know it's an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. They believe that it's an upgrade, who last season had 17 passing touchdowns to 13 interceptions. You don't want turnovers. Well, Baker Mayfield will turn the football over. We have seen that, and an 83.1 passer rating. It was really arguably the worst season of his career, aside from maybe the year after his rookie year, which had a lot of excitement because he threw 21 interceptions in 2019. Look, we've seen Baker Mayfield win. And again, I like the guy. You got to keep in mind, though, he is on the rookie deal of his contract, right, which gets brought up because it's a little bit cheaper. Same thing people try to say about Jared Goff, which I don't completely believe, because, again, I've seen other years when they say, well, he's only good if you have it perfect around him. I don't believe that. I think if it's solid around him, it's a solid foundation, he will win you football games. It doesn't have to be perfect, because it's not going to be perfect, and we already saw that last season. It wasn't perfect. I mean, it wasn't perfect when we beat Arizona. Was that the perfect scenario for Goff? No. wasn't the perfect scenario. I mean, we had Josh Reynolds as our #1 outside receiver. That's not perfect, but it was solid. It was good. And all of a sudden you're beating teams. What I see with Baker Mayfield, at least what we've seen so far, he can win some football games now. In his best season coming in 2020, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a 95.9 passer rating that he put up, 3,500 passing yards. He only had 486 attempts, which has been a thing as well. But obviously they did everything else really well around him. You watched that playoff game. They played extremely well defensively. They played really well running the football. Baker Mayfield has had success when they have those things. And we've seen that so far. When they run the ball extremely well, they're a top rushing team usually in football. They run the ball extremely well. They have a pretty darn good defense. They have been one of the best offensive lines in football. They win. And you see that by just the attempts numbers. He doesn't even throw the ball very often. If you look at his attempts per game, in 2018 his rookie had 35 pass attempts per game. Okay, that's about normal. Next year he had 33. 2020, his best season, he only passed the ball 30 times a game. Good for the Browns because that's how they were built. They could run the ball. Last season he only passed it 29 times per game. That's different than Goff, who was 2018 35, 2019 39 times a game. He had 626 attempts in 2019, 36 attempts in 2020, 35 attempts per game last season. He hasn't had to throw the ball that much. Also, I believe Jared Goff is a much more accurate quarterback. He needs to clean up the fumbles. Like pretty much all quarterbacks, it's about the position that they're in, and that's what it's about, finding is the right quarterback, like we talked about in that salary cap video. I mean, Jared Goff has thrown less interceptions in the last 4 seasons than Baker Mayfield. He just has too many fumbles, which we saw last season. They have basically the identical turnover rates in the last 4 years. But of course, when Baker Mayfield wasn't under pressure, he was really good. I mean, if you look at that bad year from Baker Mayfield, what was the thing? Their offensive line wasn't good. It was like in 2019. What was the issue? The offensive line was terrible. They were ranked 23rd in the league. Not even terrible, just not good. 23rd in the league according to PFF. Aside from that year, they've been good. They've been one of the best, if not the best offensive line in football every single season. But 2019, we didn't see that. He throws 21 interceptions. That was supposed to be a great year, bouncing off his rookie season. It was like his full year. And they go 6-10 that season. Now, their defense wasn't great. They were below average in terms of points allowed. But to me, I've seen Baker do well, but I've seen it with, again, people say perfect zero, with the best rushing attack, with the best offensive line in football, with really good weapons, right? We know Odell won it out of there. We saw Goff last season, obviously pick it up towards the end of the year. Heck, if you just take out the 4-game stretch where he didn't have an outside receiver, Minnesota when Quintez Cephas went down, to the Philadelphia Eagles game, which is where the Lions didn't have an outside receiver. I mean, just watch the Eagles game back. All right, we had a big play over the middle, Kadero Hodges drops it right off his chest. Just boop. Jumps right off his chest. Then we have another big play, flag takes us back. Obviously, last year was a mess. But if you just take out those games where not only do we not have Taylor Decker or Frank Ragnow, we also didn't have an outside receiver. If you take out those 4 games, the other 10, Jared Goff's stat line was 18 touchdowns to 4 picks, 235 yards passing game, completed 68% of his passes, and had a 99.47 passer rating. That was his stat line if you just take out those 4 games. I know it's not really fair to do, but it was just that really bad stretch that really has plummeted his stat line from last season. To me, I believe Goff can be the guy, so I would not partake in making a move like this happen. I like Baker, but I don't think it makes sense for Baker. I understand. I like his attitude. I do, and I have no issues with that. I have no issues with Goff either. Yes, he's a little bit on the quieter side, doesn't seem to be as outspoken, but I don't care about that, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. Everybody's different. That said, I have seen moments where Goff gets a little fiery. We've seen that with the past in the LA Rams. The point is, though, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't make a trade like this happen. But if the Lions were going to be involved, to me, it would have to be because, number one, they just are saying to themselves, look, Goff ain't the guy. So we know that. Might as well bring Baker in here, who John Dorsey likes, see if maybe he's got a chance. And if not, which we kind of expect, we'll just go get a guy next year, right? If you're already kind of put yourself in that boat. Otherwise, I wouldn't make this move happen. Baker's a better quarterback. Yeah, based on what? Like, again, I can go into the film. We'll go into the film probably at some point with this. But to me, I don't see any reason to believe that I would say Baker's the better quarterback than Goff. Like, there's nothing he's shown me that would make me believe that's the case. And again, I want to see this Ben Johnson Goff come together, right? Now, Baker would make sense in a play-action offense. He does a lot of play-action just like Goff did. So if they're trying to do that, I understand the Lions don't like to throw the ball a ton. And, you know, games like Arizona last season, we threw it under 30 times. We did really well. Baker could do that. But Goff showed us that he could do it as well when we run the football very well. And the reason I throw up those stats about Jared Goff is because, again, it's about finding the guy that you believe that you can win games with and paying that guy and moving forward. Because this same great season we saw in 2020 at Baker Mayfield, which was pretty darn good when he had a great rushing attack, the best football, great offensive line. I've already already seen Goff do that. I know what Goff can do on his rookie deal with those things. But to then see it like last season in spurts shows me that, no, you can still do it with him. He can make it happen. That's why I want to see a full season with him and Ben Johnson. So for me, again, I'm not in a rush to do that. Goff can throw a really good deep ball. We've already seen that in the past. We just have to get the right scenario to do it. That doesn't mean he's off schedule, but on schedule deep ball, he's a very good deep ball passer going back to his time at Cal. So all the reasons I wouldn't make something like this happen, but the Lions were going to be involved. To me, that would be the scenario. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.